So this is part 2 of the logical evidence of the biblical flood, revealed in the rapidly buried billions of fossil remains that we see on this earth today. And a reminder that Jesus said, as in the days of Noah in Matthew 24, referring back to Genesis 6 to 9, because he talked about the global flood as a reality. So this is what happens to most dead creatures. Fossilization only happens by rapid burial in waterborne sediments or mud. All creatures that die are soon disposed of, mainly by predators, flies, maggots, or they simply just rot away. And if we use our common sense, we know that everything that dies today disintegrates in a relatively short time. Do we see fossils forming today? That's a big, big no. Yet, 75% of Earth's continents have billions of fossils buried within the sedimentary layers. There's no evidence of fossilization happening on the bottom of oceans or in lakes, on mountainsides, on seashores, flat plains, in forests. Nowhere, nothing, diddly squat. So where's that rabbit now? After 7 nights, it's gone. The American settlers, they tried to starve out the American native Indians by killing millions of buffalo on the plains of America. And they'd kill the buffalo, they'd strip the hide off, they'd take some meat, and then they'd leave the whole carcass on the plains of America. Do we see fossilized buffalo anywhere? No, we don't. If a whale gets washed upon a beach, it gets eaten by predators, seagulls, crustaceans, crabs, all the creatures all around, and within a short time it's disappeared, and all that's left is bones. And even the bones disappear after about 10 to 15 years. The fossil record, most logically, is the flood fossil record. All of the fossils unearthed to present day are from the great biblical worldwide flood 4,400 years ago. The geologic column was formed by Noah's flood. 85% of the geological column, as shown in the textbooks, cannot be found anywhere on Earth in this sequence. The fossils found in the sedimentary layers are mostly in the order of where they lived and their ability to escape the rising floodwaters, and not the evolutionary timescale. So, logically, the smaller ones are at the bottom, and the marine ones, more marine ones, are at the bottom. Worms, shellfish, fish, and then you get to amphibians, then lizards, rodents, mammals. Goes from smaller to larger. The biblical flood in the days of Noah produced all the sedimentary layers. All over the world, there are billions of fossil creatures that have been buried rapidly by sediments. Here's just a few of the vast amount of fossilized fish that died suddenly in the global flood. You can Google them. Just go on Google Images. These fish died so quickly that they didn't even have time to finish their breakfast, because they were buried by mud rapidly in the global flood. See that one on the right? You can see the fish there that were buried in the sediments. 95% of the fossil flood record is composed of marine creatures, all mixed in with the animal and plant fossils. Bottom right there is an incredible fossil of an ichthyosaur buried and fossilized while giving birth. It's clear evidence of it having been buried quickly by waterborne sediments, and the fossil record is consistent with creatures having been buried suddenly. Otherwise, as I've said, most creatures would either rot or be devoured by scavengers. There is substantial evidence worldwide of rapid burial of dinosaurs and animals in mass graves, and many paleontologists have stated and recorded that dino graveyards smell of rotting flesh.
Why fossil graveyards covering the Earth's surface? There's many of them. Most dino fossils worldwide are all torn apart and they're all mixed up and they're dumped in the aftermath of the global flood, along with many marine fossils, plants, trees and many other present day animals. But they don't tell you that, do they? Yeah, they find dinosaurs with birds, ducks, rabbits, rodents, lizards, mammals, but they keep that secret.
Notice the depth of this dinosaur graveyard in China. Isn't it more logical that this was sediment laid down in a great global flood, as opposed to millions of years of dust, soil build-up? Look at those bones, they're all torn apart and they're separated and they're in a huge depth of sedimentary mud that was brought in by the global flood. And the dinos that are still intact are mostly found in positions of a sudden death throw, drowning or choking. And over the next few slides, it should be obvious that all dinosaurs died suddenly in the great global flood. Here's some more dinosaurs, death throes of dinosaurs. It was sudden, rapid death. There are not a lot of fully intact dinosaurs because most of them were all chewed up in the global flood. But there are also millions of birds. So that's an Archaeopteryx, which the evolutionists say was a dinosaur turning into a bird, but it wasn't. And even lots of evolutionist paleontologists say that it was a bird.
So this is Mary Schweitzer. She's a PhD, and you can find this easily on YouTube. It's the CNN 60 Minutes report of 2012, and it's talking about biological soft tissue in dinosaurs.
What happened next happened by mistake. Mary put some fragments of the bone in acid to dissolve away the outermost layer of mineral. But the acid worked too fast and all the mineral dissolved away. Being a fossil, there should have been nothing left. But there was. And it was elastic, like living tissue.
This is the teeth.
No. She showed us videos she took under the microscope. That's really what happened?
Yes.
That's the dinosaur bone?
Without mineral now. That's what was left.
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible. This bone was 68 million years old. So you see this and you think, what?
I didn't want to tell anybody.
She didn't want to tell anyone.
Right?
And
she'd
so
be ridiculed.
I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that looked suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
She said she dissolved the bone away and there were blood vessels. And, I was like shocked.
How could that be?
How could that be? That's right.
The things Mary was finding inside dinosaur bones,
Look at that.
blood vessels, and even what seemed to be intact cells, pose a radical challenge to the existing rules of science, that organic material can't possibly survive even 1 million years, let alone 68 million. Mary, Jack, and their team published their B-Rex findings in a series of papers in the journal Science and were promptly attacked.
They were promptly attacked by the secular scientists, and they're still being attacked even to this day, because there's so many scientists are totally in denial about this. Dinosaurs are not found in the assumed Cretaceous-Jurassic-Triassic geological column. Many are found in very deep, large graveyards, not too far from the Earth's surface, and many with fresh biological tissue present. And the science is there, it can easily be found, it cannot be denied. So there's amazing empirical evidence that many dinosaur fossils found from anywhere around the world, when honestly, scientifically tested and analysed, show that they died only thousands of years ago. I mean, look at that there. It looks as though it's just come straight from the butcher's. It's meat.
Hi, this is Mark Armitage coming to you from my lab where I've been busy working on dinosaur bones and the soft tissues within them. In fact, this is a piece of Triceratops frill that we excavated from the Hell Creek Formation in Montana, and we've been finding lots of soft tissue in this, the bone osteocytes, beautifully preserved down to hundreds of nanometers structure and still soft. In my case, my science took me to soft tissue in a Triceratops horn, and I'm talking stretchy, and I'll show you this here in a second. This is what we mean by an example of soft tissue which was collected from the Triceratops horn in Montana. I'm going to stretch it. Look at how stretchy this is. And this is full of bone osteocytes, the tiny cells that make this tissue and then impregnate it with bone mineral. And this was found 1 foot from the surface in Montana in the presence of insects, microbes, rodents, plants, and fungal bodies. And we've recovered the DNA of all of those. So this cannot hang around for millions of years in the presence of all those organisms and oxygen and water. And so this is what we're talking about by soft tissue.
So Mark Armitage, he was sacked from a California university by the Darwinian Academia for honestly publishing his work in the prestigious science journal Acta Histochemica. He runs his own lab now. So, blood vessels, cells, proteins, collagen, osteocytes, muscle fiber, nerve Philippedia. Up there on the top right is osteocyte cells, and look at those little tiny Philippedia. 68 million years old, 80 million years old. What is the logical age of these dinos? It's worth investigating. Dr. Mark Armitage's research can be found at dstri.org, which stands for Dinosaur Soft Tissue Research Institute. It's worth checking out. The Paleochronological Group Singapore Conference presentation. Up there you see this is a comparison of values for 10 Cretaceous Jurassic dinosaur bones from Texas, Alaska, USA, China and Europe. And some of the scientists there come from the United States, France and Poland. And they carbon-14 tested these dinosaur bones. Carbon-14 only dates rocks, fossils, up to 60 to 90,000 years. After that, there will be no carbon-14 left. In the last 20 years, it has been established that there is carbon-14 in all dinosaurs that are tested. So these are articles published in secular scientific peer-reviewed journals detailing the presence of biological soft tissue in assumed millions of years old creatures and plants that can only be thousands of years old. And it's going to scroll now, and there we have the specimens that they're looking at and they're testing. There we have the people who wrote the papers, these scientific peer-reviewed journals. There is the online link where you can go and have a look at these papers, and there we can see that from Google Docs, if you put in dinosaur soft tissue original list of biomaterial fossil papers, you will find this information. It's easy to find. There's lots of information. It cannot be denied. Original soft tissue throughout the fossil record. To secular scientists, the geological column represents millions of years. Yet we find in nearly every layer from the top to the bottom original tissue in fossils that refutes millions of year ages. So soft frog intact with bloody bone marrow, supposed to be 10 million years old. Keratin in Madagascar Cretaceous bed, supposed to be 65 million years old. Mosasaur blood, retina pigments, supposed to be 65 to 68 million years old. And as we go down through the column, collagen fibrils, supposed to be 125 million years old. And we go further down now. Archaeopteryx, original biological material, 150 million years. Right at the bottom, in the Precambrian, chitin fibers in tube worms, supposed to be 551 million years. It doesn't make sense that the geological column is millions of years. All these biological tissues have been well researched and they're coming up with loads and loads more every day.
There's the Lucy skeleton. I don't know whether you've heard about Lucy, but she's one of the famous icons that goes all around the world saying that this was one of our early ancestors. Now, the famous Lucy fossil, it was scanned at the University of Texas, Austin, and it says there it offers new insights into ancient human ancestor. Lucy, a 3.2 million year old specimen of Australopithecus afarensis. So look at those bones. Does that look like a human? Look at the skull. Just so few bones there. Well, if you actually start researching Lucy, where were Lucy bones found? Well, first bone was found was a knee joint and it looked human, like it could walk upright. A year later, more bones were found over 1.5 miles away and over 200 feet deeper in the rock strata. The pelvis didn't look like it could support upright walking, so the team declared it misshapen and they reconstructed it. After breaking it into pieces and reconstructing them, it appeared to able to support upright walking. So there is the evolutionary timescale of the supposed transitional fossils from apes to humans. But all these fossils of the imaginary stages of evolution from primates to humans are all just dead creatures, chimps, apes and monkeys that were drowned 4,500 years ago. So it's Lucy in the sky with diamonds. So a typical Lucy skull shown in the textbooks. How do you get such detailed skull information from so few bones? Interestingly, if you go to National Geographic March 2000, you can see how Lucy was pictured 4 different ways by the artists. In the St. Louis Zoo, it's got Lucy displayed with human hands and feet. Well, no feet or hands bones were ever found, and the purpose of this display was not for education, but for the indoctrination in the evolutionary theory. So there she is. The human story begins. You belong to the animal group called hominids. And this is how they depict her, with human hands and feet. And, those bones, were they short or long arms? Were they long or short legs? Doesn't make sense to me, that. And when they depict her face, they depict her with whites of eyes like humans. But no apes, chimps or monkeys have whites of eyes. It's all just indoctrination to fit with the evolutionary story. There's lots of forgeries. The Piltdown Man was held up as an icon of evolution for over 40 years, and then it was discovered that it was a fraud. Same with the Nebraska Man. There's the depiction of Nebraska Man. The only remains of Nebraska Man turned out to be a pig's tooth. Nebraska Man, artist drawings, even those based on speculation, powerfully influenced the public, and Nebraska Man was mistakenly based on one tooth of an extinct pig. So in 1922, in the Illustrated London News, they published this picture showing our supposed ancestors. And of course, no fossil evidence could support the image conveyed here of a naked man carrying a club from one extinct pig's tooth. Many species of fossils are found in the strata that are still living today. Well, how do you explain that? So there's the bat, and there's the bat fossil remains there, the Palangene. Same with the crayfish. It's found in the Jurassic period. The turtle, Triassic period. Dragonfly in the Carboniferous. The coelacanth, found in the Devonian layer. Well, they thought that the Devonian coelacanth was extinct, but it turned up in 1938 by some Japanese fishermen. And then the horseshoe crab, that's still with us today, but that's in the Ordovician layer. So all these fossils, they haven't changed, have they, from all those supposedly millions of years ago, because they all died in a global flood. Pre-global flood conditions. So we know that there was more oxygen on the earth before the flood, and due to increased oxygen levels, everything living grew to very healthy large sizes and lived great ages. And we know this from bubbles in amber. So they measure the oxygen in that, and it's actually 35% higher than what it is today. So it's actually 50% more oxygen. And we have these large fossils. So there's a large turtle, there's a large dragonfly, there's a bee next to that hummingbird, and there's a cockroach, huge cockroach. I wouldn't like one of them in my kitchen. There's a post-flood beaver skull, and it's huge compared to the beaver today. So there was lots of animals that lived large sizes before the flood, because we find them in the flood fossil record. The flood vegetation. We see lots of fossils of trees, grasslands, bushes, cereals, huge trees. These are remains of trees that were fossilized after the flood. And we have even the leaves of the trees that we've got today. You know, beech, oak, you know, sycamore. We've got all kinds of trees, all kinds of plants that are fossilized in the flood record. And, you know, it's just proving that there wasn't millions of years. This all happened 4,400 years ago. How do whales get to be on mountains and in desert places? Well, there's a whale fossil in the Ucayali desert in Peru, and there's another one that was found in the deserts of Egypt. There's another one whale fossils found in the Chile desert. Now, if you look at that top right picture, you can see the sedimentary layers because they were laid down in a flood. Since the 1940s, many large fossilized marine creatures have been found in desert places in all the continents around the world. There are many Basilosaurus which did not survive the global flood, or at least we have not found a live one yet. Now look at that skull there of like a crocodile. It's huge because it was massive before the flood. In the global conditions then, they could grow to very large sizes. That one's called the Sarcosuchus imperator, and you know, it's a giant crocodile. Could this be the Leviathan in Job 41? The Gobi Desert. Ongoing excavations in the Gobi Desert has become an embarrassment to the evolutionists. 25 theropod dinosaurs have been discovered along with 200 skulls of mammals. Expeditions jointly sponsored by the Mongolian Academy of Sciences and the American Museum of Natural History have excavated dinosaurs, lizards and small mammals in an unprecedented state of preservation. Freshly exposed skeletons sometimes look more like the recent remains of carcasses than the 80 million year old fossils. And you can go to that. It was in Scientific American. I've shown this before in some of my other videos, but on the 30th of May 2018, I downloaded this. Massive genetic study reveals 90% of Earth's animals appeared at the same time. And this comes from Tech Times. Anyone can go to this, it's still there. The origin of the paper, Human Evolution, volume 33. I'll scroll it up now. And it says, over the last decade, hundreds of scientists collected around 5 million DNA barcodes from 100,000 animal species in different parts of the globe. Stokel and Thaler looked through these 5 million genetic imprints to find one of the most surprising discoveries about evolution to date. They were all born around the same time. In analysing the cytochrome oxidide subunit 1 of 100,000 species, Stokel and Thaler arrived at the conclusion that most animals appeared simultaneously. As to how that could have happened, it's unclear, stated Thaler. Well, he said that because he believed in evolution, and he knew that he would get a lot of flack from the evolutionists. So just to recap, landmark new research that involves analysing millions of DNA barcodes has debunked much about what we know today about the evolution of species in a massive genetic study. Senior research associate at the programme of the Human Environment at Rockefeller University, Mark Stokel, and the University of Basel geneticist David Thaler discovered that virtually 90% of animals on Earth appeared at right around the same time. More specifically, they found out 9 out of 10 animal species on the planet came into being at the same time as humans did, some 100,000 to 200,000 years ago. Well, they're going by the out of Africa theory, but they'll find out soon that they're not correct. This conclusion is very surprising, says Thaler, and I fought against it as hard as I could, because he knew how much trouble he was going to get into. But this paper's still there. You can go to it. You can find it. It's obvious. So, what does the flood fossil record really tell us about the history of life on Earth? So we've seen all the geology of the waterborne sedimentary layers, absolutely horizontal throughout the world, which couldn't have formed over millions of years, otherwise there would have been lots of erosion and bioturbation. We've seen that fossils are rapidly buried, and they were all buried in the global flood. They weren't buried over millions and millions of years. And we've seen that there is soft biological tissue in many of the creatures throughout the whole geological column, which proves that they can't be millions of years old, because biological tissue does not last for millions of years. So evolution over millions of years or God's creation? Well, for me it's God's creation every time. What is the most logical explanation? Matthew 24, Jesus said, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." So Jesus is going to return, and that's what he was talking about here. And he says it's going to be a sudden event, just like the global flood was, when they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage. Well, that's exactly what people are doing today, eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage. But then the Lord Jesus is going to return to earth and restore this earth back to the perfection that it once was. He's not so far away. All this trouble in the Middle East is heralding the return of the Lord Jesus. So in closing now, Genesis chapter 9, and I will establish my covenant with you, neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there be any more a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you, for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. Every time I see a rainbow, I think of the Lord God and I think of the Lord Jesus. So thank you for watching. I will be posting another video soon about radiometric dating and the assumptions and the misconceptions of radiometric dating. Bye for now.